Well, it is. I hear the clock ringing outside. It is 5 o'clock. We weren't sure how many people would be able to get on today because it's obviously spring break. We had a couple of people who I knew weren't going to be able to get on today. But we go with what we've got. So we will give it another minute and then we'll start. Obviously, we have a very special guest. We have the district attorney. Mr. Glenn Funk is with us, and he is standing at a podium ready to make a very large presentation. But we had understood, at least Ms. Charles, who works in the DA's office, had understood that there were issues and questions regarding particularly what Eric Bauder is here for. And Eric, we appreciate you coming back on to talk about the behavioral health services program within the Sheriff's Department. And there was a question about why felonies were not involved in that. And so that was discussed last time. And I think Jenny was nice enough to ask our district attorney, General Funk, to come on and ask about that. So, or answer the question regarding that. So it is 5:02. We have a hard stop at 6. So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Again, Eric, thank you for coming back for this. We're going to hold with Eric for a minute because we were still getting questions from Eric last time. We got more people coming on. We are honored to have our DA with us today, General Glenn Funk, who was nice enough to come on. I know he's got a busy schedule, and we're going to let him go first. General Funk, I know Jenny has probably told you kind of what this committee is about. It started as a concern about just overall the utilization of data for people who are coming in and out of the jails in Davidson County. And who were they? Was it a revolving door? And what could we do either through the reallocation of resources or what to try to help eliminate that revolving door if that's what it was. And so we've been working for several months now on this issue, trying to figure out what we might be able to do from a budgeting standpoint. But the issues have been good. We've got a lot of data that we have not actually gone through yet with this committee, but we will at some point. We've heard from the Mental Health Cooperative. We've heard from the Sheriff's Department. The sheriff himself was on here. And so if you don't mind kind of answering the question, particularly as it was discussed about who would be able to take advantage of the new program at the Sheriff's Office. And then if you've got a few minutes, I may open it up for questions from people on the committee. So General Funk, thanks for being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
I've got a little bit of an unstable internet connection, and I apologize for that. We've got somebody from our IT department here with us, and hopefully.
So we can hear you kind of rambling, which you don't always do. I'm just making sure that's clear. But we can't hear you, and you're stuck on our camera.
Okay. No, just
now we can hear you.
Freezing.
Yeah, now we can hear you and see you, so you're good to go. Okay.
All right, great. I'd also like to introduce to this group Jordan Hoffman. She's the assistant district attorney who is assigned to what she described to me as her dream job. She's the person who's actually working with folks with mental health issues and serves as the person who's helping folks get into the behavioral care center by reviewing the dockets every morning to see who should properly be screened. So Jordan's on this as well, and if other folks have questions for me or for her, we're available to answer that. I had a chance to watch most of last week's program. Let me answer the question first about felonies, and then let's go to kind of a little bit the broader issue, which is how do we better utilize all 60 beds that are in the behavioral care center. I'm a big believer in hearing the question and answering the question. When we first set this up under the MOU, we did say that this was going to be for misdemeanors. And we got opened up sometime mid to late October. In December, I knew that the numbers did not immediately fill the facility. And I actually got a call from a lawyer who is no longer practicing. She's now a teacher. And she said, Glenn, I'm calling you because I don't know what to do. And I don't know who else to call. I've got a former student. I taught her when she was a sophomore in high school. She's the first person in her family that has gone to college. She's going to college in Jackson, Tennessee. She came home at Thanksgiving and taken the exams online. And she was not getting along with her mother's boyfriend. And they ended up getting into an argument. And she got a kitchen knife, chased him around the apartment, and then it went outside and she was chasing him around outside. Someone called the police. She was arrested a couple hours ago. She's charged with aggravated assault and 4 or 5 other misdemeanors. She has a $16,000 bond, and I don't know what to do. And I said, first thing, because it struck me, somebody chasing someone else with a kitchen knife, I said, I don't know if you're at liberty to say this or whether you would know, but does she have any type of mental health diagnosis? And this lawyer / teacher said, well, I know that she was seeing someone through the mental health co-op back when she was in 10th grade. I said, great, well, I've got an ID on this. And so I called Jordan and I said, Jordan, can we get her screened even though she's a felon? And Jordan said, sure, well, I'll do that. And so what Jordan did was Jordan, 1, got her screened for the behavioral care center. 2, reached out to the victim, who was all on board with not getting her a felony conviction and not keeping her in jail, and reached out to the officers, and they were supportive of this idea as well. So under what would have happened in the ordinary course of business anywhere else in the country, and even in Nashville, up until the time we had our behavioral care center open, is she would probably have sat in jail for about a month and a half, pled guilty to a felony, launched on a probation that she may or may not have been successful on, very well could have been bouncing back and forth in and out of jail for the next 3 years or so, and definitely would not have been able to get back into school in January. Instead, she was screened, and with the support of the victim and the officers, Jordan and the public defender's office got her into the behavioral care center, where she spent about a week. She got a fresh diagnosis. She got on her meds. She got stabilized. Social worker helped find her alternate housing. She was released. All of her charges were dismissed and expunged, and she's back in college now. I cannot guarantee that she will forever be successful, but I can tell you this: she does not have that ceiling on her future that she would have had, and she does not have the rough 3 years of dealing with the court system that she would have had anywhere else in the country. But that's the type of results that we are getting, where the victim is completely 100% satisfied, and where the person gets out of jail without having a record and still has the ability to have a bright future. That was the first felony that we did. It seemed like that made sense. Obviously, if someone goes in and shoots up a fast food restaurant while they have mental health issues, that's not somebody who's appropriate to go to the behavioral care center for 30 days and then get out with some follow-up visits. But what I said at the end of that was, Jordan, let's go through, and I met with our general sessions team as well. Let's look at the felony dockets, and if there are cases that are appropriate, and I don't want to put some sort of really strict guidelines on that. I hire good people and I trust their judgment, and I trust Jordan's judgment completely. She's someone who has been a prosecutor in Memphis. She's been a prosecutor in our office in domestic violence. She's been a prosecutor in general sessions. She's done jury trials up in front of Judge Cheryl Blackburn. She is a savvy veteran, and her heart's in the right place, and I trust her judgment completely. And so I said, let's screen those. And so now she screens not only the misdemeanor dockets, but she screens the felony dockets too. If she sees somebody on the felony docket that she thinks might be an appropriate candidate, she notifies the people in the felony general sessions court. And then those folks and the victim witness coordinator talk to the victims. And when it's appropriate, we have started taking felonies. At this point, we've had 5 people go through. And so we're felons, you got to be careful. Aggravated robbery, aggravated rape, murder, right? Well, those folks probably not. But on some cases, like the one I just described, even though, look, aggravated assault is a serious offense. Having a knife and trying to cut somebody, serious offense. But in appropriate situations, that might be what's best, not only for the victim and for the community, but clearly what's best for the defendant himself or herself. So the answer to the question of why not felonies, well, that's outdated as of December, and we are taking felonies, and we're considering felonies every day. The bigger question, which is, we've got 60 beds, why aren't we using them? Well, there are a number of moving parts. The sheriff and I worked on this for years. At the same time that we were working on getting the behavioral care center going, we were also working on bail reform. And we've been so successful at bail reform that there are not very many people who are still in jail the next morning in order to be able to be screened. If you have committed a misdemeanor or a minor felony, not a violent felony, but a felony that's not necessarily a victim-related felony, you're going to get pretrial release. You're going to be out of there within a couple hours of the time that you get arrested. And as a community, as a justice system, we're all in favor of bail reform. But because of that, there are so few people. I think the latest chart that I saw from the sheriff's department, we typically at 10 o'clock at night only have 45 pretrial misdemeanors in custody for a city of 750 to 800,000 people. That means we've been very successful on working on not detaining people pre-trial, especially when they're only charged as a misdemeanor. Problem is, what do you do with the folks who have mental health issues, and are they just getting pre-trial to where they're not still there for us to have them screened by the behavioral care center? How are we getting people? Well, we're getting folks because if you get arrested twice in a 3-month period, 2 prior offenses in the last 3 months, or 1 within the last week, then you don't get pretrial release. You're at least in jail for 24 hours until the judge can review your bail. Those folks come back, and folks with mental health issues, sometimes they do get arrested that frequently. If you get a DUI third, if you get a domestic violence, and there are times we are not really screening the intimate partners for behavioral care center, but there are times when it's generational, when a son that beats up his aging mother, but he's her caregiver, and we've got those issues because of mental health issues, right? When somebody who is older beats up a 20-year-old son, and so it's not child abuse, but it's still some type of generational domestic violence. We can screen those, and sometimes those get sent to the behavioral care center. And so it's really part of the problem is how successful we have been with bail reform. If this was 2010 and everybody was in jail and we had a ton of folks on the jail review docket every day, yeah, we would have our behavioral care center a whole lot more beds done. Here's another thing that is a consideration for what we've been doing. The sheriff believes that we will have more successful outcomes if, when the person is released from the behavioral care center, they're not released out onto probation, where they still have a number of hurdles to clear just to keep a court or a probation officer or the standard conditions of probation. He wants them to get on their meds. He wants his social worker to work with them and find them a placement. He wants to have a 30, 60, 90-day check back date, but he doesn't want the specter of jail if you get off your meds to be hanging over somebody's head. He wants it to be more carrot and stick. And I understand why he feels that way. He also doesn't want the behavioral care center to turn into a warehouse, a stopping point for folks while the court is ordering them to do a ton of other things. And I understood that. He has made that clear since the first day he put the behavioral care center on the drawing board with the council 5 or 6 years ago. I understand that. But because of that, we can't just have judges order folks to the behavioral care center. He and I have been in discussions for the last 3 months, and in fact, we talked today. There is a possibility that if a judge revokes a probation and orders someone to serve 6 months in jail, 3 months in jail, 11 months and 29 days in jail, the sheriff has the power to compute time. For a number of years, he would just essentially give everybody 2 days for every 2 days of credit for every 1 day that they served. Now he gives them 4 days for every 3 days that they've served, unless they're actually working within the jails, and then they get their 2-for-1s. Every county has a slightly different because the sheriff gets to compute jail time. One potential option would be, you know what, if you go to the behavioral care center, I'll count your days 10-to-1, 5-to-1, whatever it takes, to where at the end of 15 days or 30 days or whenever we're ready to release you, you satisfied the sentence. He has that power, but it's not something that he would want to exercise without at least the knowledge of the courts that would be violating people's probation. You know, everybody has to stay in their own lane. That's clearly his lane and his lane alone. But there are some things that if a judge really wanted somebody to serve 6 months, hour for hour, day for day, they could put some things in their judgment that would prevent him from doing those types of calculations. And so it really needs to be kind of a collaborative effort on that. And lastly, Tennessee is in the minority of states. We are an officer charged state. The majority of states in the United States are prosecutor charged states. In those states, the police make an arrest and bring somebody in and lock them up. And then the prosecutor has up to 48 hours to determine whether or not to bring a charge, and if they're bringing a charge, what the charge should be. Some places it's kind of a little bit of a hybrid where the police officers lock them up and somebody might hear the facts and set a bond. And then once the person's out on bond, the prosecutor might have a week to come up with, well, are we going to charge these folks or bring the charges? But those are prosecutor charged states. Tennessee's an officer charged state. And as we were working this, then Public Defender Don Diener and me and the sheriff and Chief Anderson met once a quarter or so. How are we going to implement the body worn the behavioral care center? The sheriff, the public defender, and I all wanted folks to not have to get booked and processed if they had mental health issues and it was a minor offense that we were going to send them to the behavioral care center. Chief Anderson, though, took the position every single person that gets in a patrol car has to be booked and processed. And because we are an officer charged state, we couldn't stop, right? That's the way it is. So one of the things that perhaps Mayor Shulman, you and me and the sheriff and the public defender need to do is get with Chief Drake, because what could happen is the police bring folks down but hold off for a few hours and before they actually take somebody into commissioner, where we could screen folks, or at least hold off for some period of time where we could screen folks. That would at least allow more people to be considered, but that would require the chief's agreement and participation in order to change that. And then the other problem is, well, what happens if somebody gets brought in at 7 o'clock on a Friday night, right? And no DA is going to show up until Monday morning. No public defender is going to show up until Monday morning. And, you know, the mental health co-op doesn't have a screener there. And so if we wanted to do that, we probably would need to make some provisions where we could have, you know, extra staffing to be able to have these folks screened, because the answer really isn't keep people in jail all the way over the weekend, keep everybody in jail all the way over the weekend. If I was to get arrested, I wouldn't want to wait until Monday morning for somebody to finally take me in front of a commissioner. The Constitution allows us, the Riverside versus California allows up to 48 hours to make that decision, but that's not the way Nashville does it. And it would be wrong to keep people in jail for 2 days when they could otherwise get a bond set and get out, or get out on pretrial release. And so we've got these competing interests. How do we properly support folks with mental health issues? How do we make sure that their cases get diverted? But we also don't want to unnecessarily incarcerate anybody for even an extra minute if this is not something that's appropriate, we want to go ahead and get those folks processed back out so that they can begin to defend their case or figure out how they're going to handle the case going forward. So it's complicated. We are working through it. Chief Drake has been very open to a lot of discussions around some of the programming that something maybe coming from me, maybe from the sheriff's department, maybe from some of the judges. I'm not saying that he and I always agree, but he's always open to the discussion. I'm hopeful that we can do something along those lines to where we can keep people from even having the collateral consequences of the arrest. So, between potentially working with getting some probation violations that have relatively short sentences that would then terminate upon completion of the behavioral care center, working on trying to have a better screening process, maybe even before they go in front of the commissioner, maybe even having some personnel that can show up on the weekends or in the middle of the night. I'm hopeful. And then, the sheriff asked me to relay to y'all tonight. What we really want is we want to produce quality as opposed to just trying to get there where the beds are filled quickly. And he feels like we're making progress and that we're having a slow build, but a build nevertheless, and that we're hopeful to be able to get the BCC fully operational, right? Fully take advantage of it fully to where we have a majority of the beds filled on any given night, within the next year. I know it seems like maybe it was Keita said something, well, maybe we need to revisit this at the end of a year. We're reviewing it every few weeks, and hopefully we're going to keep making progress. But any ideas that we get from this group, this is something that's one of my most favorite projects that we've done as a city, and it's something that we put a ton of time into already. And we got to make sure we do it right, and we also want to make sure that we do it at with the right people in there and at the right numbers. So any ideas to improve what we're doing, we are more than open to.
All right. Well, so thank you, General. I am making sure that Tanner Gibson's okay. It looks like somebody was trying to throw something at him. There he is. So do you have a few minutes to answer some questions from this group?
Sure. I thought this was an hour long, and so Jordan and I are both planning to be here until 6. So.
Okay. Well, we also have Eric on. We made him come back from the sheriff's office. So at this point, Jordan's on the thing. Jordan, do you have any? Do you want to follow up, General Funk? Do you have any other comments? And then we'll just kind of open it up for questions. And then also people can ask questions to Eric as well. Go ahead.
Sure. Well, I think that one of the concern or something that can slow us down occasionally is we have to remember that there are victims involved. And in cases like DV cases, those victims, they have to sign off on the process and essentially agree that the case can be dismissed when the person completes the program. And that can be a hard sell. So sometimes that does get in the way. But we've taken several drug cases, theft cases, and things of that nature. And I wanted to point out as well that while we do look at felonies, we also look at cases where officers are victims, such as like assault of an officer and things like that. Since October, I have contacted several Metro officers, explain this program to them, and ask them how they feel about, that particular case where they were a victim, about these people going to the BCC. I have yet to hear no. I have not heard no from a single officer. In fact, I've had officers come to me and say, do you think that this one might fit into your program? And another thing that we're doing, the screening process, the initial screen takes place in booking. So every single person that is arrested is screened in booking for mental illness. That's the list that I get every morning. And then we do a further screen if necessary, if we're going to actually move them over to the BCC. I also do the misdemeanor jail review every day, and that allows me to catch anybody that might have been missed at booking, because several people don't want to admit at booking that they're mentally ill or that they have a history of that. So me working that docket every day and being somewhere where defense attorneys know they can find me, they often bring me cases where they said, my client didn't say anything at booking, but here's what's going on. Will you consider it? And we are typically able to get the people screened and moved to the BCC within a day, sometimes just 2. So we do have a catch-all going on, and I am willing to review any case that's brought to me by a defense attorney that didn't come through the screening.
Okay, well, let me open it up, and we've got Eric back on. So this is a chance for, obviously, we have a General Funk, we have a General Hoffman, and Eric Bauder from the Sheriff's Department, who we were still talking to last time. Questions that y'all want to ask? You can either unmute or raise your hand or whatever. Oh, come on, this is not a quiet bunch. I'll ask the first one, we'll get it started. So, General, this goes back to you. You all, you said that you're reviewing this process continuously. And, obviously you answered the question about why the 60 beds aren't filled up, things like that. And you're also reviewing, people being picked up on Friday night, they're out by Monday, they never even get through the process or get reviewed to go through the process. How are you all reviewing it? Or do you have a group of people that sit down and meet on kind of a regular basis? And if somebody from our group wanted to go, what about this? How did they get that input into the group?
Right. First of all, I meet with the sheriff once a month on this and a number of topics. Try to get together with Martisa Johnson at least once every month and go over this and a number of topics. I speak to Jordan, and of course she sees the public defenders every day. The person in charge for the public defenders is
Kyle Morris.
And then obviously the deputy public defenders, Emily Herbert and Randy Hess, stay on top of this as well. And so, it is a monitoring situation. It is a discussion situation. Ultimately, I think the sheriff wants to make sure this gets done right. I'm a little bit more impatient than the sheriff is. And I think, sometimes folks looking at it from the outside looking in might be even more impatient than I am. And with good reason. We've invested a bunch of money as a city into this program, and we all know that there is a great need for this program. And so the sheriff, it's about quarterly that it used to be that the sheriff, me, the public defender, and the police chief, until he just stopped attending, because I think he sent the sheriff an email that said, since I'm not in favor of this process, I see no reason for me to continue to attend. Now that we've got a new chief, start inviting him, and I think that will probably turn into a quarterly or every other month type meeting. And it is now time, because while we started in October, we really got going probably around middle of November to December, to where we've been going for about a quarter, so we're probably due for that. Mayor, if you'd like, I'll make sure you're on the list for that discussion as well. And then if you want to invite any members of this committee or anyone else, we'll certainly make sure that we meet in a large enough room to where everyone can social distance and be able to have a free flow of ideas.
It's General, it's a very diverse group of people, but very, based upon the questions that are being asked throughout these committee meetings, I think people very much want things like this, want to be able to understand how these things are working, and want to make sure that they're effectively utilized. And so I think that's, we've had Amanda Brock on here, we've had Eric on here, again, the sheriff, trying to figure out, in the long range, I think that we want people to get their necessary wraparound services. And I think in the end, we want to reduce incarceration if we can do it. We want to help people instead of have them keep coming back and forth through that revolving door.
Right. I'm a member of the American Prosecutors Association, which is really the big city prosecutor association. And twice a year we meet, and there's usually about between 20 and 30 people that come. Nashville's on the small end of the group. I mean, it's, you know, Detroit, San Francisco, LA, Houston, places like that. But I'm actually hosting this coming July, and we talk about mental health issues almost every single time we get together. So I've heard all about the folks in Santa Clara's mobile crisis unit and you know, people having mental health courts. This is going to, when you host, you get to kind of talk about your programs, and you've got the full first half day, and probably the first hour and a half that I'm going to be talking about this behavioral care center, because I really think, after hearing from folks around the country, that what we've got is the gold standard if we can just more fully implement it.
Okay. Questions from the group again? Kind of looking to see if anybody's got anything.
I have a question.
Peter, sure, go ahead.
So, Glenn, you said that you guys had started taking people with felony convictions, or at least considering them, since December. And so my question is that how many people do you have in this program with felony convictions right now? And what is your criteria for considering people with felony convictions other than just their record?
Right. I only know that we've done 5. Jordan, you'll have to answer about whether or not how many are actually in the program right this second, and how you go about reviewing the warrants and what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm. So I know that we have had 5. Eric, right now, I think that we actually just released just last week 3 of our people with felonies.
We did last week, but we don't currently have anybody with a felony charge.
Okay.
But
So criteria for me, when somebody makes the list in the morning and it's Eric, Lacey Monday, myself, and Kyle, we look at, I'll be honest with you, we try not to consider the history. And that's because we're looking at a population who will have a long history, probably due to crimes that occurred during, mental illness. So the record is not our big concern. We do check to see if they're already on probation. That's the only thing that might hold us up, because since we're not involving the judges at this point, we don't want to have to go in and address and explain what's going on with that. As far as the criteria, Kyle and I and Lacey and Eric as well, we look at it on a case-to-case basis, on an individual basis. We didn't want to have any firm, hard rules about who could and couldn't come when we started the program, because we felt like that would eliminate people that we might be able to help. So I have had, let me see. We've had people who have been eval'd at MTMHI on a felony, for instance, a burglary, and they have come back competent. We take them mainly so that they can benefit from the discharge planning. Our discharge planning is extensive. There is one person in the BCC that does all the discharge planning. So we look at that. We have taken felony drug cases. And pretty much what Glenn said is at the beginning is that if we see a felony that is not involving a violent crime, not a shooting, not things of that nature, then I alert Deb Smith and Emily Todoran, who are in 3A, to say, please know this person has screened into BCC. And if the victims are okay with that as an outcome, be sure to let me know, and I'll have them screened and moved over that day. So Keita, I can't give you a great answer about criteria, because we do try to consider it on a case-by-case basis.
So there's no just basic criteria, and then you move from there.
Right. Now, a couple of the problems we've had with felonies, and Eric can speak to this, is that the person is in custody and they've had a lot of behavioral issues in jail. And sometimes we miss out on people that screen into the BCC whose victims would be willing, for them to get treatment in exchange for a nollie. And we can't bring them to the BCC because the sheriff has said that people that have a certain number of points and things of that nature can't come over. So we have run into that problem with felonies, but not very often with misdemeanors.
Okay, I have a lot of questions based upon that, but I saw in the chat where somebody else had some questions too, so I don't want to monopolize the time.
All right, let me go to Shawn
Can I
next.
just add one thing? Jordan,
Yeah.
are you and Kyle, and Eric, if Keita wanted to come at 7:30 one day and just shadow, is that okay?
Welcome. Come on in. And Keita, I'll also say that our arrest numbers are low with COVID and other things going on. So our list of people coming in have tended to be very short. So don't be surprised if you come in and it's a day when we have 2 or 3 people to review. Unfortunately, COVID has really taken a hit on this program for us when it comes to numbers.
Yeah, but Keita, we can also share with you who all's on the total misdemeanor docket and the total felony docket, so you can see what all Jordan's looking at, what all Kyle's looking at, and see it in action and report back to the group as somebody who's a community stakeholder instead of a representative of our office. And look, transparency is the best way to get better. And so look, I'm more than happy to have you come in and observe firsthand.
All right, Keita, you can follow up, I guess, with Jordan, and if that works, then you can come back and kind of give us a report on kind of what you saw. Okay.
Okay, definitely.
Okay, thanks. Shawn, you had your hand up. You're next, and then I think Tanner, you may have had a question, so I'll go to Shawn next.
Yeah, so I was listening. Well, thank you. First of all, I was listening to the examples that were given in the early part of the story about the young lady who was in college and how she was able to go through the program and get right back to her life. So it brings a question to me: what's being done to inform the public that this is an option? Because I think about someone who could be having a mental health issue or crisis at their home, and maybe there's a family member who wants to get help but doesn't want to call the police because, unfortunately, we've seen in national news that sometimes those mental health checks or those things go awry, and the person who is actually in crisis ends up no longer living, ends up being killed. And so sometimes families are hesitant to call the police, and or they don't know that they have the option of the mental health for them to go to that to the mental health center, behavioral health center, as opposed to going into jail. So what's being done to inform the public of their options in situations like that?
The sheriff tells a really moving story about a friend who called him and said, "My son's having a mental breakdown. I don't want him arrested and incarcerated, but I need somebody to help him. And maybe, is that the right thing? Can you get a police officer to come out?" Well, that's terrible, because I cannot imagine how desperate you have to be as a parent to want the state to get involved and essentially, stamp a tattoo on your own child's head of having an arrest that, even if it gets expunged, there are some people who will be able to find that record. But, if they're having a psychotic episode to such extent that, they might either hurt themselves or others, then that's how desperate you can be as a parent. And so it happens, right? It's happened to even city leaders where friends have called and said this. And when I was a defense attorney, sometimes I might have a client that I'm hired by the victim who is a parent and said, look, I had to call because this, and I didn't have anywhere else to turn in order to make sure that I stayed safe or he stayed safe. So it is a real, and when I tell the story of the behavioral care center, people have not heard this, that we have done this as a community. Of course, we're still in the first 6 months, right? And we're still not at full capacity yet. I was on a podcast last week, got about 10,000 listens. I don't know how many of those were Davidson County and how many of those were outside Davidson County. But whenever I'm talking in public, I talk about it. I'll be in front of the mayor on Monday on my budget hearing. That'll be on Channel 3. And you can bet the first 5 minutes, I'm going to be talking about some of the programs of our office and highlighting this one. When I'm in front of the council on my budget hearing, Mayor Shulman, just be aware, I'm going to eat up some of my time talking about the behavioral care center and a couple other programs, even though y'all are going to really want me to talk budget. But this is something that I think it's important whenever we can get in front of large numbers of people, because I want that those families to know that if they're in this situation, they might not need to be as reluctant to call the police, because we really do have an avenue in this county to take good care of folks and to get them the help that they need. You know, that also dovetails with what I talked about earlier, that if we can do this in a way where the person doesn't actually even go in front of the commissioner and get booked and processed and have their fingerprints sent to the TBI to keep forever, you know, if we can do that where we're actually taking care of somebody that has an illness as opposed to committing a crime. I would love to figure out other ways to publish this, and we very well may shoot a video that we can put on our website. Of course, how many folks go to the district attorney's website, you know, to get news on what's going on in the community? But this could be something that, you know, we could get on community access. This could be something that, and not just me, but the mayor and the vice mayor, when y'all are speaking to large groups, talk about, brag about, because this is really something that not only is something that Nashville should be proud about, but this is something that Nashvillians need to know about. Because if people know about it, you know, then I think we will see more folks being able to use it. And if you've got any ideas yourself on what we can do, share them now, or call my office and I'll call you back and we'll talk it through, or set up a time to spend an hour talking about it. It'd be great.
Shawn, any follow-up?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Okay. Tanner, you're next.
Thank you. I guess this question will be to Glenn and Jordan, and maybe even to Eric. So, you know, I left the public defender's office before the BCC opened, but so many of our clients, my clients who had mental health diagnoses or were in the middle of an episode when they were arrested, didn't speak English as their first language. And so, you know, a big concern is about what language services are being offered or could be offered if we could divert some money to it. Not just Spanish, but immigrants from Africa who speak Kurdish, or, you know, whatever the case may be. And then a related question, which might open a can of worms that I don't know if we're prepared to talk about, is have there been situations where a person has been diverted to the BCC when that person doesn't have legal status? And is there going to be a prohibition on that so that a person under the right circumstances could avoid being arrested and could avoid the attention of ICE?
Answering your last question first, it is the policy of our office not to proactively cooperate with ICE. Right? I can't speak for the other agencies that are involved. With regard to how the sheriff's department deals with that, Eric, I'll let you answer. And as far as language services, whether Jordan or Eric, y'all can talk about how many different folks were able to help in those areas.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know that we've had anyone within the BCC that had a language barrier. We've had some that speak other languages but also spoke English. We do have obviously language services, language line in booking, where individuals that come in custody that don't speak English might speak another language, that we can actually communicate with those individuals that come into booking.
Jordan, any follow-up?
Well, I would just say that when we are considering cases, when I see somebody might have an ice hold or something, that has no bearing on my decision ever.
Okay. Tanner, follow up?
I would just hope that, you know, aside from the language line, I would hope that the language a person speaks as a first language wouldn't necessarily have to be a barrier because of the services that the BCC could offer. I would just, you know, want to know if there's any plan or ability in the future to staff up for that or provide services for that.
That would have to be, that question would have to be handled by the sheriff and the public defender, because we do not see it as a barrier. Thinking through for an extra 60 seconds on the ice, I would think this would also help folks who are undocumented, because when they complete the BCC, their charges are dismissed. There's no, you know, this does not turn into a conviction that can trigger either an ice hold or a grounds for deportation.
That was my concern. Thank you.
And we may have the public defender on for the next call. Okay, so you can ask her then. I needed to make sure, besides Councilmember Sepulveda, I know Councilmember Allen is on, Berkeley Allen is on today, just listening, so just wanted to mention that. All right, Peter, you're next.
All right, thanks. So I think it's exciting to hear about this program. I think, you know, what I've heard from around the country, this is definitely an exciting program to have this in the jail. But I am interested in the evaluation of it. So, you know, one of the things, it sounds like, you know, you all are meeting regularly, but the sort of formal program evaluation. So how do we know that the program's working? Are you all working with, you know, external evaluators or auditors to, you know, try to look into some of these aspects, to look at the different stages in the program? Is that happening internally, or sort of what's all that looking like?
Right. We are not working with external auditors, but the DA's office is looking at recidivism to see who gets rearrested, if anybody. So far, we hadn't had anybody get rearrested. Am I right on that, Jordan? We're still
One.
One. Great.
It was,
No longer say we've got a perfect record, right? But
I know.
but we're tracking that. And then one of the things that because when they're released from the BCC, they're given a 30 and 60 day, maybe even 30, 60 and 90 day comeback date to meet with mental health co-op folks. And they're also given 30 days worth of meds as they walk out. So they walk out with medications. Even if they don't go to their 30, 60, 90 day check back in dates, right? Even if they don't take advantages of the services and the supports that we have provided, those criminal charges do not get reactivated, right? Those are dismissed, they're gone forever. We are not going to reactivate those, even if they turn their back on the grace that was extended and go out and mess up again even, or just blow us off and do something else. Those charges that they were charged with, not. But the sheriff's office, is at least my understanding from the sheriff is that as this goes on, whether it's the mental health co-op or whether it's some of his social workers, and correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, and whether you've started it now or if it's still something in the planning stage, we should be able to have a metric at the end of the year to where we can say this many folks actually did the follow-up. Not we got them the running start, we got the diagnosis, we got them on their meds, we got them stabilized, we gave them the supports, we gave them the meds, we gave them the follow-up dates. This percentage of folks actually showed up at that 30-day mark and at that 60-day mark, because I think that's important. It wouldn't capture everybody that's doing good, because some folks might move back in with their parents in Los Angeles and continue to get their mental health treatment there, and it might not get back to the mental health co-op that they followed up. And so it might underreport to some extent, but that'll give us some insight into whether or not this program sees the lasting effects. And I think if you put those documents together with hopefully a drastic reduction in recidivism, then we're going to get a real good picture on whether we're being effective.
Eric, did you want to follow up?
Yeah, just a little a little follow-up with that. We have started keeping statistical information. I think I sent it, I sent it to someone. Anyway, I don't know if the whole group got the information or not, because the last time someone was asking for statistical information and I sent that out yesterday. But anyway, to Peter, to answer your question, it's funny that you said about the data and statistical information. I just got a email from the sheriff and chief. I'm one of the chiefs. We're meeting actually next week. We're applying for a grant. It's like a 2-year grant for an individual that would do nothing but data on the behavioral care center. So that's something that we're going to apply for, obviously, starting next week.
Okay. Peter, any follow-up?
Yeah. I'm a sociologist. You know, my training is academic, and you know, this is something that's not really well reflected in sort of the criminology research. And so, if there are ways to partner with, you know, researchers at TSU, they have a criminal justice department who are doing some of this research. It might be a good way to, you know, really get, you know, the progress that's being made, you know, evaluated with some external input, as well as getting some of that published into the academic world, so that some of this might be able to spread to, you know, training future criminal justice researchers or policymakers around the country.
Okay.
We also did I don't know if it reflects on that, Peter, or not, but we did a case study. The National Sheriff's Association did a case study on the behavioral care center to kind of get the word out of what we're trying to do here in Nashville, so that other agencies across the country and across the state can maybe try to replicate what we're trying to do here.
Okay. Any follow-up, Peter, on that one? You good?
No, I'm glad to hear that you all are applying for grants to really focus on this data, because I think it's really important to have someone tracking it closely.
Okay. Anybody else? I'm going to go back to Keita. We've got about 6 minutes left, and I need about 2 minutes at the end. So, Keita, I'm going to go back to you. We got about 5 more minutes worth of time for questions. Go ahead.
So this was in relation to something that Jordan had mentioned earlier about some people that may have like some behavior issues at the jail. And I think we all know that sometimes people that do have mental health issues, particularly those that have gone undiagnosed and people that have been self-medicating, they do tend to have behavioral issues in the jail. They do tend to act out. And so what is being done, you know, to take that into consideration when you guys are talking about who you're going to be admitting into the program based upon the number of points because of some behavioral situation in the facility? And
Well,
that you may not be able to answer that. That may be something that somebody
Yeah,
can answer.
it's more of a classification. It's a classification kind of issue. A lot of times we take these case by case, and yeah, individuals have issues on the jail side as far as their acuity level, and also a lot of times they have incompatibles, which means basically they can't be housed with certain people. So that tends to be an issue as well when you're trying to house someone. It's more of the behavioral care center. I can't wait to let you guys see the inside. It's more of a therapeutic kind of environment over there. It's wooden doors, glass windows, drywall walls. The furniture is even different over there, so it's not conducive for an individual who might have a history of violence or altercations with inmate on inmate assault or inmate on officer assaults inside the jail. But we do a case by case evaluation of that whenever Jordan feels like the person's a good candidate, and Lacey Monday with the Mental Health Cooperative think that the person's a good candidate. They don't all. I mean, we have accepted people that have had behavioral issues into the behavioral care center. It's not to say that you're just completely denied access because you have behavioral issues. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
Jordan, did you have any follow-up on that?
Well, Keita, that's something that Kyle and I had wanted to potentially discuss with the sheriff at our next meeting, because we don't want people to not be able to come because of that. As you stated, some of that behavior would be expected. So we're hoping that we can talk to him about that next time. But as far as it goes right now, Eric has been great about, if we push for somebody and we really think they'd be a good fit, then Eric will take it to the next level and try.
Well, we lost her for a second. All right, Keita, it sounds like, I think we got time for one more question if you've got one. And George is stuck. So.
My question was, and Jordan's frozen, so may not get the answer to that. But for those of us that wanted to come and actually see this, firsthand, is this something that, is this Zoom? Is this in person? Like, because I know that I've seen the Supreme Court order, but I just don't know, how you guys are doing this.
Eric, can you answer that one?
Yeah, I can answer that. We do both. We've done both. I'm sorry. We've done Zoom and in person. This last week or so, we've been depending on Kyle Morris's schedule. A lot of times he Zooms in, but we've been doing it in person. Obviously with masks on and everything, but we've been doing it in our conference room there at the Behavioral Care Center at we generally meet right at around 7:30 in the morning.
Eric, can you get in touch with Keita? We can get your our email address, and because Keita's there's a couple of us that are interested in participating, and what we need to do is be able to figure out if it's Zoom, if we participate, if there's too many people, whatever. So yeah, can we work with you to get that information?
Yeah, it looked like, I was looking at the chat over here. It looks like there might be 3, so it might be, the conference room's not really huge. So we'll look at it. We'll if it's too big, we'll do a Zoom. We can do it Zoom easily, easily that way. But I'll get a hold of her, and we'll communicate that the best day that works for everybody for them to come over.
Keita, you good with that?
Yes, I'm good with that. I'm taking down the names of the people in the chat that said that they were interested. So right now we have myself, Shawn, Vice Mayor Shulman, Vienna. I'm sure Anna would definitely want to go. Tanner and Aiden, and then there's Betsy wants to go. Council members Sarah Pova wants to go. So it looks like a lot of people. Morgan wants to go. So it looks like pretty much a lot of people on this call wants to. We all want to see this. Yeah, I guess we can work this out, because like Tanner said, this all opened after I left the public defender's office, so I'm not really sure how this is working. Raheem wants to join, so I think pretty much everybody on here wants to join, so we just need to figure out the best way to do this so that we can all see this without really interrupting the process.
And maybe we just open up a number of dates, and people can sign up for whatever date they want. And that way we wouldn't have 20 people trying to wedge in at the same time. And it might also be able to give a variety of experience so that folks can see slightly different dockets. Might be good to compare notes at the end of it. Be great.
All right, so it's right at 6. General Funk, thank you for taking the time today to do it. Eric, thank you for coming back. We lost General Hoffman, but make sure you thank her as well.
I will.
And we all may see her anyway if we all participate and go to this review. But I really do appreciate the time. I appreciate everybody's time. One thing really, really quick. So we've been sending out lots of information. Anna Elbescu, who's helping with this, asked for a bunch of budgetary information. We sent that to you all this week as well. In 2 weeks, we'll be back. We may have the public defender here, but at some point you all need to kind of look at that documentation and figure out whether it's helpful, whether you want more, what you want to talk about, that type of stuff. Okay. So just be aware of that. That's all I really needed to tell you to make sure that you understood that. And if you're missing documentation, let me know and we'll get it back out to you. But we've sent out a bunch of stuff. At some point we need to talk about it and see whether it's relevant to what we're doing. Okay. Jordan, you got back on. Thank you. You froze for a while.
I apologize.
That's okay.
The power in my entire house went out, which is why
Oh.
it went totally black. So
Oh.
I'm
Well,
sorry about that.
That's okay. No problem. It was a good look for you when you froze. So we got pictures of that.
Good. I'm glad it was flattering.
It was. It's very flattering, and all of us took pictures. Okay. Thank you all, everybody. Everybody, be safe. We still got a ways to go with the pandemic. Keita, good luck with getting this all organized. Okay, we're putting you in charge of that. Everybody, be safe. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all for having me.
Sure. Thanks.